I have another one that's kind of in that same space, also with a bit of a web slant called Schemathesis,
Oh,
something
this
like
is
that.
cool.
So the idea is you've got an API, and the API is documented with something like Open API 3 or Swagger or something like that, which is a bunch of HTTP endpoints and then descriptions of the data is exchanged, right? Here's the endpoint, here's the the JSON document, or God forbid XML document, I almost said there, right? But here's the thing being exchanged, right? And then you would hope that the actual service actually exchanged data that looked like it described it exchanged, right? So this project basically tests for conformance with the API as you declare it in your own documentation. So that's pretty nice. It supports those two formats that I said, Swagger and OpenAPI, and it's built with Hypothesis, JSON schema, and drumroll please, PyTest.
Yay.
Yay. So the idea is it reads your application schema, and then using Hypothesis, it will generate test cases that ensure your application is compliant with its own schema.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it works in two ways. You can write tests with PyTest. Obviously, it's kind of meta, but then write tests with PyTest and write code to talk to these things. It seems like maybe the predominant way actually to do it is through this command line interface, where you can point it at a URL at the schema definition, the documentation, and then the actual endpoints, and it'll just go and do all that work, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, you can also parallelize it. You can pass the number of workers for concurrent test execution. Also, if you're testing something that has an app, as in Flask or AIO HTTP or something like that, instead of firing up a thing that goes through the network, that goes through the whole serialization layer and hits some running thing, it'll actually just load up your app and run it in process, right? As if you're doing unit testing against your Flask or AIO HTTP app. So you can give it directly just basically the package or the module, and it'll just run it like without the web infrastructure in between.
Yeah, so that probably speeds things up quite a bit.
Yeah. At least you don't have to have a server running somewhere. So it's probably also easier for CI/CD because there's not a second thing to be running to then talk to. You just run it straight out of thin air. And then also, Calvin, you're talking about being keen on Docker. This CLI also can run as a Docker image. So there's like no setup other than just Docker run this.
Living the dream.
Living the dream, baby. It's always going to work as long as you have Docker. Anyway, that looks like a pretty cool thing. And there's a little example in here. It's not super clear to me like how to put specific use cases into the code test. So that's why I say I think the CLI is kind of the way to go. Like there's ways to write code, and it uses a parameterization through Hypothesis, but it's a little bit generic, I guess, on what you would assert for. Anyway, if you've got APIs and they're already documented with Swagger or Open API, this seems like a cool thing to point at it just to make sure that it's hanging together. Thank you for watching this segment of the Python Bytes podcast. This video was made during the recording of the full episode. Visit pythonbytes.fm and get the whole story. Subscribe to the podcast and get the entire episode delivered to your phone. Please support our work by taking one of the courses at pythonbytes.fm/courses or learning PyTest with Brian's book at pythonbytes.fm/PyTest. Finally, visit our sponsor shown on the screen here. Visit the link on the screen and get the special offer for Python Bytes and YouTube listeners. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.